Okay, now recording. Sweet.
All right, is it back up? Cool.
Go ahead.
So, go-ipfs. Can you guys mute? Could you guys mute, please? Richard? Thank you. All right, so for go-ipfs in Q4, we want to finish up our endeavors from Q3, which includes IPLD and a few other things like the core API and some GX stuff and some bandwidth reduction stuff. Beyond that, what we really want to do in Q4 is make sure that we clean up go-ipfs, make things work better, add documentation, make it easier to get into, things like adding more tests all over the board. We made a endeavor for Q3 to get higher code coverage on every repo. We haven't quite made that. Time constraints are difficult, but I want to definitely work on finishing that in Q4. We also should look at other resource consumption stuff because we made some resource consumption goals in Q3 that we didn't really expect to finish in Q3 just because those are very broad things, but I think we should continue pushing that in Q4. And then testing. Testing NAT traversal, testing other various scenarios, benchmarking things, and really getting to be more confident about what we're shipping out and what we're really pushing on people to use. Also directory sharding would be really cool to have done in Q4, just because it's mostly done already. Yeah, so trying to avoid focusing on new features in Q4, because I think it'll be better overall for everybody involved if we just try to make it better as opposed to tacking on all these fancy things. So that's going to be the primary motivation. That said, we don't have to not do new things. Protocol Labs in general is going to be focused on just improvement overall of the code base. So if other people want to help work on new features, by all means, we'll help out. One?
Yeah, I think there's a distinction between, say, completely new features and, say, things that are sort of in flight that have been kind of standing still for a while. So, for example, there is, something like private networks, like the shared private networks thing, is something that has been sort of in flight and has been discussed. That would be a big deal. It is sort of a new feature, but it's sort of in a gray area. Another one that comes to mind is like the data store file storage in the file system thing that has been in flight for a while, and we need to do a lot of review and landing that and getting it shipped. So that is something that's up for consideration. I know, Kevin is part of the call right now, and I think he would want to work on that this quarter. There's other things going on. For example, I'm talking to a couple people about different transports, so UTP and Quick, and so potentially being able to ship those. Those would be mostly integration on our side. They would do them, and then we would be working on integrating them potentially. So these are sort of like new things. I do think that it's due that we spend a good chunk of time just focused on improving what we have now and fixing bugs and doing things like the massive bandwidth reduction, getting it more stable, and that sort of thing, like getting IPFS to be rock solid.
Yep, definitely agreed. So that is our primary focus. So in particular, do we want to discuss, how do we want to run these calls today? Do we want to discuss details of what we want to try to accomplish or this quarter, or do we want to?
Maybe focus on, honing in on figuring out priorities, but also get a sense of what it's going to take, right? If things are going to be, if it's high priority and it's going to be really hard versus it's moderate priority, but it's really easy. Those kinds of things, because it's those kinds of assessments that then impact where things land on the roadmap.
Yeah, I definitely missed what you just said because my internet connection was being pretty
All right.
bad.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
So basically, just go ahead and use this time as you need. Just keep in mind the main thing you're wanting to get out of this is figuring out priorities, honing in on priorities, and also figuring out how hard certain things are going to be, so you can figure out where and how to slot them into the roadmap. But
Right. Okay.
as you see fit.
Cool. So the near-term stuff that we're working on is from most immediate moving to less immediate. Most immediate is we're doing the 044 release as just the pin set bug patch. So we're hoping to have that out today, basically once we're done with these calls. So hopefully have that out today, pushed. It's the fix itself is already merged into master, and then we have a patch that we're applying on 043 and having that be the only thing applied there so people can get it out sooner. I also have a tool that is capable of potentially recovering lost pins if you haven't run a garbage collection. So if you've encountered this pin bug and you haven't run a garbage collection, you can run this tool and it will print out things that look like pins. Sorry, go on.
We probably should leave that to a post that describes all this sort of stuff. And
Right.
Because we're diving deep into like discussing like tools and so on. We probably would just want to say like super high level.
Right. I just would like to make sure that this is clear for anybody watching because it's fairly important. Just in general, it's
okay.
pretty important thing. Yeah. So that's a possible thing. So just putting that out there. You'll read more in the blog post when we have that out. Yeah. So next is IPLD. IPLD is coming soon. We're getting things prepped and ready, switching over to different libraries for addressing things, and then going to have the CBOR IPLD nodes available hopefully quite soon, at least in some development builds. So that'll be cool. Beyond that, Kevin has been working on the file store code. We're getting pretty close on that, pushing a lot of compatibility and like interop changes there, making it easier to integrate that. So we're hoping to have that in fairly soon. Not sure the exact timeline there, but it's moving along pretty great. Beyond that, we have some other things that we're finishing up from Q3. We have the core API. Lars, would you like to say anything on that end? Fuzzy Lars?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's coming along slowly, and once these two PRs that are open and another one emerge, the gateway can be extracted, and then that can be a blueprint for doing more work on the core API and with the core API. Like ideally, we'll have most of the core commands use the core API. And it's an ideal project for people in the community to jump in, because it can be chunked into very small pieces of work.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, we'll get that done. Next up is just in general the code coverage endeavor that we had from Q3. We're probably, I'd say, maybe halfway done with that overall, which is good and bad. It's a lot of work. It's a lot more work than we expected, I think, and that's partially why it hasn't gotten done yet. So we're going to keep pushing that in Q4 and just try and ship more tests, which is never a bad goal. And yeah, so that's roughly it for the Q3 carryovers. So moving over to like Q4 specific things, documentation is going to be a big thing. I want to make an effort to, make it easier for people to figure out, how do I make something with IPFS and various different modes of that. And I think we'll probably talk more about specifically what we want to see there later, but that's going to be kind of a big goal for us. And yeah, so having that'll be big on our timeline this quarter. The next is, in general, just cleanup. So that's going through issues, fixing bugs, trying to take our massive 473 issues and trim that down and close things out, clean things up, make things better, and generally just pay off technical debt that we've accrued. This will be really, 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 really good for the code base, and I think it'll provide a nice ramp for Q4 leading up into Q1 where we can really start doing some new cool stuff. Clean up the code base, make it nice, get it ready, and then moving forward from there, it'll be a good jumping point, I think. Kuba, do you want to provide any updates on anything?
I don't think so. I finished working on the Go reuse port and the limiting number of threads locked in syscall. So, and as you discovered, it fixed IPFS on Raspberry Pi. Yeah, so with the new reuse port fixes, the IPFS no longer will just spawn thousands and thousands of threads. And also we use fewer file descriptors per connection, because previously we would use 2 file descriptors per network connection because of the way reuse port was working. Now we're just using 1 reuse port for the whole thing, and then per connection 1 file descriptor. So that's a big improvement there. And also, I've noticed enables it to run normally on a Raspberry Pi, whereas previously it couldn't because Raspberry Pis have thread count limits. So that's really, really cool. So yeah, any other thoughts, Juan or Matt?
So do you feel like you'll be able to build the list of milestones that you want to put onto the roadmap based on the stuff we've discussed up till now?
Yeah, because our Q4 goals are really just going to be closing out issues in general. We have a bunch of open issues. There's 470 something of them. And really the main goal is to make that number shrink, and make that number shrink in a meaningful way where we're actually fixing and closing these things out in general things that people complain about, fix the code base. Go on.
Well, I don't think it's about number, right? It's about hitting the most important ones.
Right.
It's a process of sorting what is the most critical stuff to fix. And so that is work that we should be doing now to create the list of things that we commit to fix this quarter.
Right. So wait, you think we should go through an issues list on the sprint call?
No, I'm saying we probably have already surfaced the biggest things to tackle. They're here. So in that pad, for example, right? It may be useful to actually go through the pad to go through several of the things here that we think are valuable, or maybe surface all of the things that are not listed here that we think may be important.
Okay. So in general, Richard?
Just want to point out we have 4 minutes left, so we may not have time to do that today. We could probably run a bit into JSFFS too.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's not going to take so long to go over this list. So what we want to see in particular is better test coverage, testing of NAT traversal. We want to see a continuous test net running, so a set of nodes of different versions and different scenarios running user loads automatically. We want to see more documentation, more examples, some best practices of doing things with IPFS, some deep dive into doing a certain thing with IPFS posts. We want to start looking at work on actually working on private networks. I don't know if we're going to prioritize that or not yet, but it's definitely on board. We want to reduce bandwidth usage. This is both DHT content routing changes as well as fixes to BitSwap, and potentially looking at using PubSub for some of these. we do definitely want to merge the file store code. We are moving along pretty nicely on that, I think. Kevin, do you want to say anything on that real quick? Or
Can you hear me?
yeah.
No, not really. I would kind of like to get this in before too much IPLD stuff gets in, because the two are really conflicting with each other. And every time you mode something, you just make more work for me. But that's just like a...
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm just constantly rebasing, re-merging, fixing conflicts.
Yeah, I know.
But as soon as this can get in, the more happier I will be.
Cool.
Kevin, one question. So
Yes.
the IPLD changes with a raw block specifically allow you to point directly into the file system and treat those as independent objects, which is something that may vastly simplify the implementation of the
Yeah,
of the data set.
so it was simplified a little bit. However, actually, I think I worked with Jeremy, and I was able to really isolate that code into like one or two little modules, and so it's just like a quick replacement now.
Yeah, it's pretty clean now, so I'm liking it.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Okay.
So yeah, all right. Now, under the most requested things from people, community partners in general, is private networks, reduction of bandwidth, reduction of resource usage. So memory and CPU reduction, we have a few different things that we can definitely hit with this. For example, peer store information can be written in disk, and other similar things. So that's somewhat low-hanging fruit.
We still haven't killed, for example, metrics in data store.
Yeah.
And those metrics are the memory hungry metrics.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff there that we can hit and lower memory usage. Improving connectivity. So improving connectivity right now means testing connectivity. We need to figure out which situations we actually need to fix before we go blindly trying to fix them. The go-ipfs API. So we need to figure out who wants to captain this and then make a clear path forward. I think the best way forward for this is to get the core API defined and then just implement the go-ipfs HTTP API using the core API, like make it implement that interface. Tor integration, so this means working with OpenBazaar and looking at the Tor code that they have right now and auditing this and then figuring out what all the different security implications are. So that's definitely on the to-do list. Data store and file store, yeah, so we talked about that. Is that Juan that wrote that? Did you have anything in particular, or did we discuss this already?
No, you discussed it.
Okay, cool. And then sharding. So sharding is reviewing and then getting stuff merged and, yeah, doing that. So that's not a huge list, but it's a very, very important list. And so I think if we work on prioritizing those things, that we are going to make some awesome progress.
It may be worth stating that whoever can, reads this, or maybe we can make a general note. Now would be a good time to surface things. We will go through the issues and so on before we figure out the final milestones list for go-ipfs. But if people have certain things they really want us to remember to post, it would be a good time to either reference those, or we probably should make some way of people highlighting these things that they think are super important, because we may be missing something.
Proposal that maybe we start having an issue like Q4 desires or goals. Can just be sort of people can just start putting in stuff, or should they do issue specific things? Hey, I want this, because then it's kind of duplicating. I don't know where. I don't know as a new user where I could best say those things besides jumping on IRC. Is what I'm asking. So having a quarterly issue where people can comment might be a good idea.
Yeah, we could do that.
Alternatively, we could figure out a way of trying to source some notion of importance from the issues list. I don't know, there are tools that do this, that will parse your issues and then tell you these are the ones that have most comments, these are the ones that have most the reaction upvotes or whatever. Something like that might give us a very clear view into this, like Project Repos or something like Project Repos.
So I'll look into seeing if I can find something that'll actually log reactions. I know that's a new GitHub feature. I don't know if that's available through their API, but that's a really good point and a good question. So I'll say that I'll look into that, and we can go forward from that. I'll make an issue on IPFS community about where the best place to weigh in on go-ipfs issues is in the future going forward. For now, I'll make a Q4 issue on go-ipfs where people can comment in the next coming week or two. And that should also go out to all the people who watch it, as opposed to people who just watch this call. So, make sense? Sound good to everyone? Great.
All right. Does that cover the go-ipfs call?
I think so, yeah.
Cool. All right. So the next hour is JavaScript focused. We'll be doing 30 minutes on Orbit and then 30 minutes on JS-IPFS, and then all you Go people will come back in an hour to talk about libp2p. So take it away, Hod.